My name is Calvin. I'm 62 years old, and I've spent the last 5 years living alone in the 2-story house my wife and I built together in the suburbs of Portland, Oregon. When my daughter Emily told me she was getting married, I felt that warmth in my chest that only a parent knows. But there was something about Brandon, her fiancé, that made me uneasy. Maybe it was the way he looked at my house every time he visited, like he was calculating something. The wedding was 2 weeks away, and I kept telling myself I was just being an overprotective father. I had no idea how wrong I was about that. Before I continue with what happened, let me ask you something. Have you ever trusted someone only to discover they had other plans all along? If you've experienced anything like this, or if you're watching from anywhere in the world, drop a comment below and let me know where you're tuning in from. And please hit that like button and subscribe to this channel. What I'm about to tell you might just save you or someone you love from making the same mistakes I almost made. Now let me take you back to where this all started. It was 8 months before the wedding when Emily first brought Brandon home for dinner. I remember standing at the door, watching them walk up the driveway hand in hand. Emily was 28, beautiful like her mother, with that same bright smile that could light up a room. She'd spent the last few years focused on her career as a graphic designer, and I'd honestly wondered if she'd ever settle down. So when she called to say she'd met someone special, I was thrilled. Brandon was 32, tall, well-dressed in a charcoal suit that looked expensive. He had that confident handshake, the kind that says he's used to making deals. He worked in real estate development, Emily had told me, and he seemed successful. Over dinner, he was polite, asked about my work, laughed at my jokes. Everything seemed normal, perfect even. But then the questions started. "This is a beautiful house, Calvin," Brandon said, looking around the dining room. "How long have you lived here?" "My wife and I bought the land and built it about 30 years ago." I told him, feeling that familiar ache when I mentioned her. "She passed 5 years back." "I'm sorry for your loss." He paused, cutting into his steak. "The neighborhood has really developed since then, hasn't it? Property values must have gone up significantly." I nodded, not thinking much of it. "I suppose so. I never really paid attention to that sort of thing." Emily jumped in, changing the subject to their recent trip to the coast. But I noticed Brandon's eyes kept wandering around the room like he was measuring appraising. The second time they visited was worse. We were sitting in the living room, and Brandon brought it up again. "You know, Calvin, this house is pretty big for one person," he said casually. "Have you ever thought about downsizing?" Emily shot him a look. "Brandon, that's not really appropriate." "I'm just saying," he continued. "There are some great options out there for people in your stage of life. Condos, active living communities, less maintenance, more freedom." I forced a smile. "I'm happy here. This is where I raised Emily, where my wife's garden still grows in the backyard. I'm not going anywhere." Brandon nodded, but something in his expression told me he wasn't satisfied with that answer. The third visit was when things got really strange. Emily was in the kitchen helping me with dessert when Brandon appeared in the doorway of my home office. I hadn't even realized he'd wandered off. "Sorry, just looking for the bathroom," he said. But his eyes were on my desk on the filing cabinet in the corner. "Down the hall, second door on the left," I told him. That night after they left, I found the drawer of my filing cabinet slightly open. The one where I kept important documents, including the deed to the house. I told myself I must have left it that way. But the seed of doubt had been planted. As the wedding approached, Emily was radiant with happiness. She'd talk about Brandon like he was the answer to all her prayers. He was successful, ambitious, caring. He wanted a family. He made her feel safe. Every word she said made me feel guilty for my suspicions. But then Brandon started asking about my will. We were at a restaurant, the three of us celebrating their engagement officially. Brandon ordered an expensive bottle of wine toasted to family, to new beginnings. Then, as casually as if he were asking about the weather, he said, "Calvin, have you updated your will recently? With Emily getting married, you'll want to make sure everything's in order." Emily looked uncomfortable. "Brandon, we don't need to talk about this now." "It's important, honey. We're family now. We need to make sure Calvin's taken care of, and that everything is clear for the future." I took a sip of wine, studying him over the rim of my glass. "I have a will. It's handled." "That's good. Really good." He leaned back in his chair. "You know, with property law being what it is, it's smart to have everything documented. Powers of attorney healthcare directives. Have you set those up?" "I appreciate your concern," I said carefully, "but I've got it covered." Emily changed the subject again, but I saw her apologize to Brandon with her eyes, like she was sorry her father was being difficult. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying all the conversations, all the little comments and questions. My friend Frank, a retired lawyer, had told me years ago that I should update my estate planning. I'd been putting it off, not wanting to think about mortality. But Brandon's interest felt different. It felt predatory. The next day, I called Frank. "I need to talk to you about something," I said. "Can we meet?" We met at a coffee shop downtown, away from anywhere Emily might run into us. I told Frank everything. About Brandon, about the questions, about my growing unease. Frank listened, stirring his coffee slowly. When I finished, he set down his spoon and looked at me seriously. "Calvin, I'm going to say something, and I want you to really hear me. Check him out. Do a background check before this wedding happens. I can't do that to Emily. She loves him. And that's exactly what makes her vulnerable," Frank said. "Look, I've seen this before. Guy swoops in, targets someone with a parent who has assets, plays the long game. You said he's in real estate. That's a red flag right there. He knows how to evaluate property, how to manipulate situations. But Emily would never. Emily wouldn't know. That's the point. These guys are good, Calvin. They isolate. They manipulate. They make the daughter think the parent is the problem." I left that coffee shop with a sick feeling in my stomach, but I also left with Frank's promise to help me do some digging. 2 weeks before the wedding, Frank called me. His voice was grim. "Calvin, you need to come to my office. Now." I drove to Frank's office with my hands shaking on the steering wheel. The sky was gray, threatening rain, matching my mood perfectly. Frank's secretary waved me right through. He was waiting behind his desk, a manila folder in front of him. "Sit down," he said. I sat. Frank opened the folder and slid it across the desk. "Brandon Mitchell Hayes, 32 years old, works as an independent real estate consultant." That much is true. And the rest, 2 bankruptcies, one 7 years ago, another 3 years ago. He's currently about $200,000 in debt to various creditors and banks. My stomach dropped. That's not even the worst part. Frank pulled out another document. 5 years ago, he was involved in a relationship with a woman named Dorothy Parker. She was 68. A widow, owned her home outright in Seattle. Brandon convinced her daughter, who he was dating at the time, to help him get power of attorney over Dorothy. They claimed she was showing signs of dementia. Was she? Not according to her doctor, who testified later. But by the time anyone figured out what was happening, Brandon had refinanced her house and pocketed $80,000. The daughter helped him, thinking they were protecting her mother's assets. What happened? Dorothy fought back, hired a lawyer, but the case was settled out of court. Records were sealed. Brandon walked away, probably gave back some money, and the daughter was left dealing with the fallout. Last I heard, Dorothy had to sell the house anyway, because of the debt Brandon had saddled it with. I felt like I was going to be sick. He's done this before. He's a predator, Calvin, and he's very, very good at it. The bankruptcy records show he's desperate. Men like that are dangerous. I have to tell Emily. Yes, you do, but be prepared. She's not going to want to hear it. I called Emily that evening and asked her to come over. She arrived with a smile on her face, carrying wedding magazines talking about centerpieces and seating arrangements. I hated what I was about to do. Emily, sit down. We need to talk. Something in my voice made her smile fade. What's wrong? I showed her the folder. I watched her face as she read through the documents, the court records, the financial statements. I watched hope turn to confusion, confusion turn to disbelief. Where did you get this? She asked quietly. I had Brandon investigated. She stood up so fast her chair fell backward. You what? Emily, listen to me. This man has done this before. He finds women with parents who have property, and he… Stop. Just stop. Her face was red tears streaming down her cheeks. How dare you? How dare you investigate him behind my back? I'm trying to protect you. Protect me or control me. She was shouting now. You can't stand that I'm happy. You can't stand that someone wants to marry me, so you go digging for dirt. Emily, there's a woman in Seattle who lost everything because of him. He told me about his past, about the hard times, about the mistakes he made. That's why I love him, Dad. Because he's honest with me. Because he's changed. Has he told you about Dorothy Parker? She hesitated just for a second. He explained that situation. It was a misunderstanding. The family came after him when things went wrong. That's not what happened. You don't know him like I do. She grabbed her purse, headed for the door. I thought you'd be happy for me. I thought you'd want me to have what you and Mom had. But instead, you're trying to ruin it. Emily, please. She turned at the door, and the look in her eyes broke my heart. I'm marrying him in 2 weeks, Dad, with or without your blessing. The door slammed. I stood in the empty living room listening to her car pull away, wondering if I'd just lost my daughter forever. The next morning, my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer. Hello. Calvin. Brandon's voice was cold, nothing like the warm, friendly tone he'd used before. I know what you did. Emily told me everything. Good. Then you know I'm on to you. You're a bitter old man who can't let go of his daughter. That's all. I know about Dorothy Parker. I know about Seattle. There was a pause. When Brandon spoke again, his voice was even colder. That was a long time ago, and it was handled legally. You targeted her, just like you're targeting Emily. He laughed. It wasn't a nice sound. Emily doesn't need you anymore, Calvin. She has me now, and after we're married, she won't need your approval, your advice, or your interference. If you think I'm going to let you get your hands on my property, your property, he laughed again. That house is wasted on you anyway. An old man alone in all that space. Emily's your only family. When you're gone, it'll be hers. And what's hers is mine. Not if I can help it. You can't stop this wedding. If you try, you'll lose her forever. She already thinks you're against her happiness. Keep pushing and she'll cut you out completely. Then where will you be, alone in that big house with no one to even check on you? The line went dead. I sat there holding the phone, staring at nothing. Brandon had just confirmed everything I suspected, and he'd also shown me exactly how this was going to play. He'd positioned himself as Emily's protector and me as the villain. If I pushed too hard, I'd lose her. But if I did nothing, I'd lose everything. That's when I knew I had to be smarter than him. I called Frank back. I need your help, not to stop the wedding, to catch him. Frank arrived at my house that afternoon. With him was a man named David, a private investigator he'd worked with before, and a woman named Detective Sarah Morrison from the Portland Police Department's Financial Crimes Unit. We sat in my living room, the same room where I'd hosted Brandon and Emily for dinner, and I told them everything. Every conversation, every strange question, every red flag. Detective Morrison took notes. She was in her 40s, sharp-eyed with short dark hair, and the kind of calm demeanor that made you trust her immediately. "Mr. Calvin," she said, "what you're describing fits a pattern we've seen before. Elder financial abuse usually perpetrated by someone close to the victim. A child, a caregiver, or in this case a son-in-law. Can you arrest him? Not yet. He hasn't actually committed a crime. Asking questions isn't illegal. Even his past in Seattle, since that was settled, doesn't give us grounds." "So what do we do?" Frank leaned forward. "We let him make his move, but we make sure we're ready to catch him when he does." Over the next 2 hours, we laid out a plan. David, the investigator, would continue monitoring Brandon's activities. Detective Morrison would coordinate with the Financial Crimes Unit, preparing for when we had evidence, and Frank would help me prepare the trap. "First," Frank said, "we need to secure your actual assets. Your real deed, your will. Any powers of attorney you have, those go into a safe deposit box at the bank, right away. But if they're not in the house and Brandon tries something, he won't know they're not here. We'll leave copies, but we'll make them obviously fake if anyone examines them closely. A notary who isn't licensed, a signature that's slightly off, enough to prove forgery if he tries to use them." "What about Emily?" I asked. "She's going to be in the middle of this." Detective Morrison's expression softened. "Unfortunately, she already is. But our goal is to protect her, too. If Brandon's using her to get to you, she's as much a victim as you are." "She doesn't see it that way." "She will," Frank said. "When he shows his true colors, she'll see it. But we need proof. We need him on record attempting fraud." That's when David spoke up. "We can wire your house. Small cameras, audio recording devices. All legally placed, since it's your home. When Brandon makes his move, we'll have everything documented." "You think he'll try something here?" "I think," Frank said, "that after the wedding he's going to move fast. He'll want to consolidate control before you have a chance to change your mind or talk to Emily. That's when he'll be most vulnerable, most likely to make mistakes." "So I just wait." "You wait," Detective Morrison confirmed. "And when he comes, you call me immediately. We'll be ready." The next morning, David came with a technician. They installed 4 tiny cameras in my living room, office, and kitchen, the kind you'd never notice unless you were looking for them. They also set up audio recording equipment, all feeding to a secure server David controlled. "State law requires that you inform people if they're being recorded," David explained. "But there's an exception for your own home if you suspect criminal activity. Just to be safe, we've got signs up at your entrances about security systems. That covers us legally." I walked through my house after they left, feeling strange, knowing every word. Every movement would now be captured. It felt like turning my home into a trap. But then I thought about Dorothy Parker losing everything. I thought about Emily, blinded by love, walking into the same trap. And I knew this was necessary. The next step was the bank. Frank went with me. We put the real deed, the real will, and all other important documents into a safe deposit box. Then we went back to Frank's office where he'd prepared the fakes. "This power of attorney," he showed me, "has an invalid notary seal. The number doesn't exist in the state database. If anyone tries to verify it, it'll immediately flag as fraudulent. And if Brandon tries to use it, then we have him on forgery, attempted theft, and fraud. That's serious prison time." We took the fake documents back to my house and put them in my filing cabinet, exactly where Brandon had seen the real ones before. "Now," Frank said, "you wait. The wedding is in a week. Act normal. Act like you've accepted the situation." That was the hardest part. I called Emily, left a voicemail. "Sweetheart, I'm sorry about our fight. I love you and I want you to be happy. I'll be at the wedding. I'll walk you down the aisle if you still want me to." She didn't call back for 2 days. When she finally did, her voice was cautious. "Do you mean it, Dad?" "Of course I mean it. You're my daughter. Nothing changes that. And Brandon, I'll give him a chance for you." I could hear the relief in her voice. "Thank you, Daddy. That's all I wanted." Lying to my daughter was the hardest thing I'd ever done, but I kept telling myself it was to save her. The week before the wedding, I played my part perfectly. I met with the wedding planner Emily had hired, approved expenses, wrote checks. I went to the rehearsal dinner and shook Brandon's hand, toasted to their future. Brandon watched me carefully, looking for any sign of deception. I gave him nothing but a tired smile and a father's resignation. "I'm glad we can move forward," Brandon said, his arm around Emily. "Me too," I lied. Emily hugged me that night and whispered, "Thank you for understanding." I held my daughter and wanted to scream the truth at her. Instead, I said, "I love you, sweetheart. Always." The night before the wedding, I sat alone in my house. I took out my wife's jewelry box, found her wedding ring, held it in my palm. "I hope I'm doing the right thing, honey," I said to the empty room. "I hope you'd be proud of me." I thought about all the ways this could go wrong. What if Brandon didn't take the bait? What if Emily never forgave me? What if I lost her trying to save her? But then I thought about that woman in Seattle, Dorothy Parker, who probably sat in her house just like this, trusting her daughter, trusting her daughter's boyfriend, right up until the moment they stole everything from her. I checked my phone. Detective Morrison had sent a text. "We're ready when you are." Frank had sent one too. "Stay strong. This is almost over." I put on my best suit, the one I'd worn at my own wedding 40 years ago. I looked at myself in the mirror and barely recognized the man staring back. I looked older, harder, more determined. I drove to the wedding venue, a beautiful place by the Columbia River, with views of the water and the mountains beyond. 80 guests were already arriving, laughing, celebrating. No one knew what was coming. The ceremony was set to begin at 3 in the afternoon. I arrived early, watching as workers put final touches on the flower arrangements, as the string quartet warmed up as the afternoon sun sparkled on the river below. It should have been perfect. Emily was in the bridal suite with her bridesmaids, and Aunt Linda, my late wife's sister. Linda caught my eye as I passed, gave me a small, sad smile. She'd been the only family member I'd told about my concerns, and though she didn't know the full plan, she knew I was worried. "You okay?" she mouthed. I nodded, kept walking. Brandon was outside with his groomsmen smoking cigars, laughing too loud. When he saw me, he raised his glass. "Father of the bride, come have a drink." I joined them. Accepted a glass of scotch. I had no intention of drinking. Brandon's friends were all like him. Sharp suits, confident handshakes, talking about deals and money and opportunities. I wondered if any of them knew what Brandon really was. "Big day," Brandon said, putting his arm around my shoulder like we were old friends. Gaining a son, losing a daughter, all that traditional stuff. Something like that. "Listen, Calvin." His voice dropped, became more intimate. "I know we got off on the wrong foot, but I want you to know I'm going to take care of Emily. She's never going to want for anything. I'm sure she won't." He squeezed my shoulder. "And we're going to take care of you too. Family takes care of family, right?" There it was again. That underlying message. That threat disguised as comfort. "Right," I said. At 2:45, the coordinator came to get me. "Time to see your daughter." Emily was standing in front of a full-length mirror, and for a moment, I forgot everything else. She looked exactly like her mother had on our wedding day. The same dress style, the same elegant updo, the same glowing happiness. "Dad," she breathed, turning to face me. Tears filled her eyes. "I'm getting married. I crossed the room and took her hands. "You're beautiful, sweetheart. Your mother would be so proud. I wish she was here." "She is," I told her. "She's always with you." Emily hugged me, careful not to crush her dress, and whispered, "I'm so glad you're here. I'm so glad we're okay." Every instinct screamed at me to tell her the truth right then, to stop this wedding, to save her from what was coming. But I'd made my choice. I had to let this play out. "I love you, Emily. No matter what happens, remember that." She pulled back, looked at me strangely. "That's a weird thing to say right now." "Just remember it." The music started. The coordinator lined up the bridesmaids, the groomsmen. Emily took my arm, and we waited at the entrance to the ceremony space. Through the doorway, I could see all the guests standing, turning to look. "Ready?" I asked. "More than anything," Emily said. We walked down the aisle together. Every step felt like walking toward a cliff. I saw Aunt Linda in the third row, dabbing her eyes with a tissue. I saw Brandon at the altar, his smile wide and triumphant. I saw Detective Morrison, dressed in civilian clothes, sitting in the back row where no one would notice her. When we reached the altar, the officiant asked, "Who gives this woman to be married?" "I do," I said. The words felt like ash in my mouth. I kissed Emily's cheek, shook Brandon's hand, and took my seat in the front row. Alone. The ceremony passed in a blur. I heard Emily say her vows, heard Brandon say his. I heard them pronounced husband and wife, watched them kiss, watched everyone applaud. And all I could think was, what have I done? The reception was held in a pavilion overlooking the river. Dinner was served, toasts were made, music played. I danced with Emily during the father-daughter dance, holding her close, memorizing every second, because I didn't know what would come next. "I'm happy, Dad," she whispered as we swayed. "Really, truly happy." "Good," I managed. "That's all I ever wanted." During the reception, I noticed Brandon talking to a man I didn't recognize. 50s expensive suit, constantly checking his phone. They stood in a corner away from the other guests, their conversation animated. Aunt Linda appeared at my elbow. "Calvin, who's that with Brandon?" "I don't know." "I overheard them talking earlier. That man's name is Mr. Peterson. He's some kind of real estate investor." My stomach tightened. What were they saying? Brandon was talking about properties, about opportunities. And then he mentioned you. Linda's voice dropped. "He said, 'Give me 2 weeks. 2 weeks for what?' I don't know. But Calvin, something's not right. That man asked me about you. About your health. About whether you'd been forgetful lately." "What did you say?" "I told him you were sharp as ever." "But why would he ask that?" I looked across the pavilion at Brandon laughing with his new wife, his hand possessively on Emily's waist. He caught my eye and raised his glass, that same triumphant smile. I understood then. He was already building his case, already spreading the idea that I was declining, forgetful, potentially incompetent. When he made his move, he'd have witnesses who'd heard him express concern about poor Calvin getting older. Maybe not quite all there anymore. It was brilliant. And it would have worked if I hadn't been ready for it. The reception ended around midnight. Emily and Brandon were leaving early the next morning for their honeymoon in Hawaii, 10 days on Maui. As they prepared to leave, Emily hugged me one more time. "I love you, Daddy." "I love you too, baby girl." Brandon shook my hand, held it just a little too long. "We'll see you when we get back, Calvin. We have some things to discuss. About the future." "I'll be here." "Oh, I know you will." His smile didn't reach his eyes. "Don't go anywhere." I watched their car pull away, taillights disappearing into the night, and pulled out my phone. I texted Detective Morrison. "It's starting." She replied immediately. "I know. Stay alert. Call me the second he contacts you." The next 10 days were the longest of my life. I went about my normal routine, gardening, reading, grocery shopping. But every moment I was waiting. The cameras in my house recorded everything, capturing empty rooms and an old man living his life waiting for the trap to spring. Frank called every day. "How are you holding up?" "I'm okay. Nervous." "That's normal. Remember, when he comes, stay calm. Let him talk. Let him incriminate himself." "I know." "Calvin, you're doing the right thing." "I hope so." On day 8 of their honeymoon, I got a text from Brandon. Just 4 words. "We're back tomorrow. Ready." I showed Frank. He called Detective Morrison. They coordinated, made sure everyone was in position. That night I barely slept. I kept going over the plan. Brandon would come with fake documents. He'd try to get me to sign over power of attorney, or he'd present forged papers claiming I already had. Either way, we'd have him. But what if it didn't work? What if he was smarter than we thought? What if Emily got hurt in the process? At 6 the next morning, I got another text. "Coming by at 2 p.m. today. Have some things to show you. Important." I forwarded it to Detective Morrison and Frank. Morrison replied, "Perfect. We'll be ready. Don't let him know you're recording." Frank wrote, "Remember, stay calm. Let him do the talking. This ends today." And I made coffee, tried to eat breakfast, but couldn't. I showered, dressed in jeans and a casual shirt, wanting to look relaxed. I checked the cameras one more time, made sure everything was working. At 1:30, Detective Morrison called. "I'm parked 2 blocks away with backup. The moment you need us hit, send on that text I gave you." "Okay. Calvin, you can do this." At 1:55, I heard a car pull up, then another. I looked out the window. Brandon's black SUV, and behind it, a silver sedan. My doorbell rang. I took a breath, counted to 3, and opened the door. Brandon stood there in a business suit, smiling. Behind him was Emily, looking uncomfortable, wearing jeans and a t-shirt. And next to them was a man I'd never seen before, carrying a leather briefcase. "Calvin," Brandon said warmly, like we were old friends. "Hope we're not interrupting." "No, come in." They filed into my living room. I'd made sure the couch faced the hidden camera directly. Brandon and Emily sat together, his hand on her knee. The stranger sat in the armchair. "Calvin, this is Mr. Harold Willis," Brandon said. "He's a notary public. We asked him to come along today because we have some important documents to discuss." Harold Willis was about 50, balding, nervous looking. He opened his briefcase without making eye contact. "Can I get anyone something to drink?" I asked, playing the gracious host. "No, we're fine. This won't take long." Brandon leaned forward, his expression serious and concerned. "Calvin, Emily, and I have been talking during our honeymoon about your situation here. My situation. Living alone at your age in this big house. It's a lot for one person to manage." Emily finally spoke up, her voice small. "Dad, we're just worried about you." "I appreciate that, but I'm fine." Brandon continued, his voice smooth and reasonable. "The thing is, accidents happen. Falls, medical emergencies. You're 62, and while you seem healthy now, things can change fast. We want to make sure you're safe." "I'm perfectly capable." "Of course you are, right now." He reached into his pocket, pulled out a glossy brochure. "But Emily and I found this place, Spring Meadows Retirement Community. It's beautiful, Calvin. 3 meals a day, medical staff on site, activities, social opportunities. You wouldn't be alone anymore." He slid the brochure across the coffee table. I picked it up, looked at pictures of smiling elderly people playing cards, doing yoga, eating in a dining hall. It looked nice. It also cost probably $4,000 a month. I'm not interested in a retirement home. It's not a home, it's a community. Active living for active seniors. Brandon's smile never wavered. And here's the best part. We've already arranged everything. That's when Mr. Willis opened his briefcase fully and pulled out a stack of papers. "What's this?" I asked, though I knew exactly what it was. "Your new living arrangement," Brandon said. "Emily and I are selling this house. The money will cover your expenses at Spring Meadows for years. You'll be taken care of, and Emily will have peace of mind knowing you're safe. You're selling my house. We're helping you transition to a better living situation." I looked at Emily. Her eyes were red like she'd been crying. "Emily, is this what you want?" She opened her mouth, but Brandon answered for her. "It's what's best for everyone. You get the care you need. We get peace of mind. And frankly, Calvin, this house is too much for you to handle." I never agreed to sell my house. Brandon's smile tightened slightly. "Actually, you did. Emily has power of attorney. You signed it last month, remember? Or maybe you don't. Your memory's been a bit fuzzy lately." "My memory is fine." "Is it?" He leaned back, crossed his arms. "Emily's been telling me about some concerning things. Forgetting appointments, repeating yourself, getting confused about dates. Classic early signs." "That's not true." Emily looked at the floor. She didn't contradict him. Brandon reached over and took a document from Mr. Willis. "This is the power of attorney you signed. See, right there, your signature." He held it out. I took it, looked at it carefully. It was the fake Frank and I had planted in my filing cabinet. My signature, or a close forgery. A notary seal that looked official, but wasn't. "I don't remember signing this," I said. Which was true. "That's concerning Calvin. That's exactly what we're talking about." Brandon's voice took on a patronizing tone like he was talking to a child. "This is why Emily and I need to step in. To protect you." Mr. Willis cleared his throat. "Mr. Calvin, I have the sale documents here. The house has been appraised at $750,000. A very fair price. If you could just sign here and initial here, we can finalize everything today." "And then what? I just move out." "We've already reserved a room for you at Spring Meadows," Brandon said. "You can move in next week. We'll help you pack, of course. Keep what's important to you, sell or donate the rest. The rest being my entire life. Things are just things, Calvin." Brandon's mask slipped for just a moment, irritation flashing across his face. "You're being unreasonable. This is what's best." I set down the power of attorney and looked directly at Brandon. "What happens to the money from the sale?" "It goes into a trust. For your care." "A trust managed by who?" "Emily and I will be the trustees. To ensure the money is used properly." "Of course you will." Emily finally looked up. "Dad, please, we're trying to help you." I turned to my daughter. "Emily, do you really think I need to be in a retirement home?" She hesitated, and in that hesitation I saw doubt. "Brandon says, I'm not asking what Brandon says. I'm asking what you think. I just want you to be safe." "I am safe. Here, in my home." Brandon stood up abruptly. "This is pointless. Emily, he's clearly not in a state to make rational decisions. Mr. Willis, what are our options?" The notary looked deeply uncomfortable. "Well, if Mr. Calvin is deemed incompetent, the power of attorney would allow. I am not incompetent," I said firmly. I stood up too, facing Brandon. "And I'm not signing anything." Brandon's face hardened. "You're making a mistake, old man." "Am I? This house should be Emily's. You're going to die someday, and when you do, it'll be hers anyway. Why are you being so selfish?" "Because it's my house, my life, my decision." "You're a stubborn, senile old fool." Brandon stepped closer, towering over me. "That house is wasted on you. Living here alone, hoarding it like some kind of dragon on a pile of gold. You should be grateful we're offering you a clean way out." "A clean way out of my own home?" "Yes. Before you fall down the stairs and rot here for weeks before anyone finds you, Emily gasped. Brandon! But Brandon wasn't done. The mask had fully fallen now, and I could see the real person underneath. We've been patient with you, Calvin. We've tried to do this the nice way. But if you won't cooperate, we'll have to take other measures. What measures? We'll have you declared incompetent. We'll get a doctor to testify that you're experiencing cognitive decline. And then we'll sell this house anyway, with or without your permission. On what grounds? I've been documenting your decline for months, asking people about your memory, your confusion, your inability to manage your affairs. I have witnesses. I have evidence. I smiled. Evidence. That's interesting, because so do I. Brandon froze. What? I pulled out my phone and hit send on the text to Detective Morrison. Then I looked at Brandon and said calmly, Actually, I think we should all go to the police station. Right now. What are you talking about? I'm talking about the cameras that have been recording this entire conversation. About the fact that the power of attorney you're holding is a forgery. About the fact that Mr. Willis here isn't actually a licensed notary. I turned to the nervous man in the armchair. You want to tell them? Or should I? Harold Willis stood up, looking like he wanted to disappear. I think I should leave. Sit down, I said. The police will want to talk to you. Brandon's face went red. You can't do this. I just did. Every word you've said has been recorded. The threats, the fraud, the attempted theft, all of it. You senile son of a… I'm not senile, I'm not confused, and I'm not signing anything. I looked at Emily, who was staring at Brandon in horror. I'm sorry, sweetheart, but you needed to see this. You needed to hear what he really wanted. Dad, what's happening? Your husband married you to steal my house, and he's done it before. Brandon lunged toward me, but before he could, my front door burst open. Detective Morrison strode in with 2 uniformed officers behind her. Brandon Hayes, you're under arrest for attempted fraud, forgery, and elder abuse. Everything happened very fast after that. The officers handcuffed Brandon while he shouted threats and obscenities. Mr. Willis, it turned out, was named Harold Chen, not Willis, and he'd been working with Brandon for years, pretending to be a notary to facilitate various scams. He started cooperating with police the moment they read him his rights, probably hoping for a reduced sentence. Emily sat frozen on my couch, watching her husband of 10 days be led away in handcuffs. She looked at me with eyes that were lost, confused, and slowly filling with horror as understanding dawned. Detective Morrison stayed behind to collect the forged documents and get my statement. She was professional, but kind, explaining what would happen next, what charges would be filed, what Emily and I could expect. After everyone left, it was just me and Emily in the quiet house. She hadn't moved from the couch. Sweetheart, I said gently, sitting down next to her. He wasn't who I thought he was. Her voice was flat, emotionless, like she was in shock. No. He married me to steal your house. Yes. Did he ever love me at all? That was the question I'd been dreading. I don't know, Emily. I honestly don't know. She started crying, then deep, wrenching sobs that shook her whole body. I pulled her into my arms and held her while she fell apart. My daughter, who thought she'd found her happily ever after, who'd walked down the aisle just 10 days ago, was now married to a con artist who'd used her as a tool. I should have listened to you, she cried. When you showed me the investigation, I should have listened. He was very convincing. I was so horrible to you. I said terrible things. You were in love. People do irrational things when they're in love. I don't understand. How did you know? How did you plan all this? So I told her. About Frank, about the background check, about Detective Morrison, and the cameras, and the fake documents, about the trap we'd set, and how Brandon had walked right into it. Emily listened, her face growing paler with each revelation. You did all that. You planned all of this. I couldn't let him hurt you, even if you hated me for it. I don't hate you. I'm so sorry, Dad. I'm so sorry. We sat together as the afternoon light faded, holding each other, trying to process what had just happened. Eventually, Aunt Linda came over, having heard from Detective Morrison what had occurred. She made tea, ordered pizza that none of us ate, and just sat with us. "What happens now?" Emily asked. "Now," I said, "we figure out how to move forward." The next few days were a blur. Detective Morrison called with updates. Brandon had a court date. The district attorney wanted to interview both Emily and me. Media outlets picked up the story because it turned out Brandon's operation was bigger than anyone realized. He and Harold Chen had targeted at least 5 other elderly homeowners across Oregon and Washington, successfully stealing from 2 of them before getting caught attempting a third. Emily moved back into her old bedroom. She couldn't face going back to the apartment she'd shared with Brandon. Every day she met with lawyers working on annulment papers. Oregon law allowed annulments in cases of fraud, and this definitely qualified. "I feel so stupid," she told me one night over dinner. "You're not stupid, you're trusting. There's a difference. I put you at risk. I almost cost you your home. But you didn't. I'm still here. We're both still here." She pushed food around her plate. "How do I ever trust anyone again?" "Very carefully," I said, "with your eyes open. But don't let this make you cynical, Emily. Don't let Brandon steal that from you, too." A week later, Detective Morrison came by with more news. "I wanted to tell you in person. We've identified 4 more victims. Brandon's been running this con for almost 10 years. The first case was in California. He got away with it, then moved on before anyone caught him." "How much money are we talking about?" I asked. "Collectively close to $1.2 million. Houses refinanced, bank accounts drained, properties sold. He's good at finding vulnerable people and exploiting them." Emily looked sick. "I helped him. I was part of his plan." "You were a victim too," Morrison said firmly. "He manipulated you, used your love for your father as leverage. You're as much a victim as anyone." But I could see Emily didn't believe that. She carried guilt like a weight, and I didn't know how to lift it for her. The preliminary hearing came 6 weeks later. Brandon pleaded not guilty. Tried to claim it was all a misunderstanding, that Emily had misunderstood his intentions. But the recordings from my house were damning. His voice clear as day, explaining how he planned to steal my home, threatening me, admitting to documenting false claims about my mental state. His lawyer argued the recordings were inadmissible, but Detective Morrison had made sure everything was done by the book. The judge ruled against Brandon, and his lawyer immediately advised him to take a plea deal. 3 months after the wedding, Brandon Hayes was sentenced to 7 years in federal prison for multiple counts of fraud, attempted theft, forgery, and elder abuse. The judge, a woman in her 60s, didn't mince words. "You preyed on families," she said. "You used love and trust as weapons. You targeted elderly victims and manipulated their children. This court has no sympathy for you." Emily and I were both in the courtroom. I held her hand as the sentence was read. Brandon turned and looked at us, his face full of rage, but said nothing. As they led him away, I felt Emily's hand tighten in mine. "Is it over?" she whispered. "It's over." But of course it wasn't. Not really. The legal part was finished, but the healing was just beginning. 6 months after Brandon's sentencing, Emily and I settled into a new routine. She'd gotten the annulment taken back her maiden name and was slowly rebuilding her life. She'd started therapy, talking through the trauma and manipulation. She had also started volunteering with a nonprofit that helped victims of financial elder abuse, turning her experience into something positive. One Saturday morning, we were working together in the garden, planting new flowers where her mother's roses had once grown. Emily was quiet, focused on her work, but I could tell something was on her mind. "Dad," she finally said, "can I ask you something? Anything. At the wedding, when you walked me down the aisle, did you know then? Did you know what was going to happen?" I set down my trowel and looked at her. I knew Brandon was dangerous. I knew he was probably going to try something, but I didn't know exactly when or how. "You let me marry him anyway." "Yes." "Why?" I took a breath. "Because if I'd stopped the wedding, if I'd forced you to call it off, you would have resented me forever. You would have always wondered what might have been. You would have thought I was just a controlling father who couldn't let go." I paused. "I needed you to see his true nature yourself, even if it meant letting you get hurt." Tears filled her eyes. "That must have been so hard." "It was the hardest thing I've ever done. Harder than losing your mother. Because at least then, I couldn't have prevented it. But with this, I could have stopped it at any moment. I could have told you everything, shown you the evidence, refused to attend the wedding." I reached over and took her hand. "But you would have married him anyway, and then I wouldn't have been there to protect you. You protected me even when I hated you for it. That's what parents do." She was quiet for a moment, then asked, "Do you think he ever really loved me? Even a little?" I'd thought about this question a lot over the past months. "I think Brandon loved what you represented. Access to me, to my house, to financial stability. I think he convinced himself that was the same as loving you. But real love doesn't manipulate. It doesn't lie. It doesn't use people. I really thought he was the one." "I know you did, sweetheart. How do I trust my judgment again? How do I know I won't fall for someone like that again? Because now you know what red flags look like. You know what manipulation feels like. You're smarter and stronger than you were before." "I don't feel strong." "But you are. You're here working through it, helping others. That takes tremendous strength." We went back to planting flowers, letting the conversation fade into comfortable silence. Later, Aunt Linda came over for dinner, bringing homemade lasagna and stories about Emily's mother that made us all laugh. "Your mom was stubborn too," Linda said to Emily. "When your dad first asked her out, she said no 3 times. Thought he was too confident, too sure of himself. But he won her over eventually." "How?" Emily asked. Linda looked at me and smiled. "He was patient. He showed up consistently, not pushing, just being there. Proving he was who he said he was. That's how you build trust. With time and consistency." After Linda left, Emily helped me clean up the kitchen. As we washed dishes, she said quietly, "Thank you, Dad." "For what?" "For not giving up on me. For fighting for me, even when I was fighting against you." "I'll always fight for you, Emily, no matter what." She hugged me, then soap suds and all, and I held my daughter and thought about how close we'd come to losing everything. The months continued to pass. Brandon tried to appeal his sentence, claiming his lawyer had been inadequate. The appeal was denied. Detective Morrison sent me updates occasionally, letting me know that other victims had come forward, that additional charges had been filed. Brandon would be in prison for a long time. Emily began dating again very cautiously. She brought a young man named Thomas home for dinner once. He was a teacher, quiet and kind, and he looked nervous meeting me. I appreciated that. We had a nice evening, and after he left, Emily asked, "What did you think?" "I think he seems like a good person, but it's early. Take your time. Get to know him, and trust your instincts." "What if my instincts are wrong?" "Then trust mine too. I'm here. I'll always tell you what I see." She smiled. "I know you will." A year after the wedding that changed everything, Emily and I attended a conference about elder financial abuse. Emily was there as a volunteer with her nonprofit. I was there as a speaker, telling my story to a room full of social workers, law enforcement, and concerned citizens. standing at that podium, looking out at all those faces, I talked about trust and manipulation, about how predators like Brandon identify vulnerable targets, about the warning signs families should watch for, about the importance of having difficult conversations before crisis happens. After my talk, people came up to share their own stories. A woman whose mother lost her house to a caregiver, a man whose father was scammed by someone claiming to be a financial advisor. Each story was different, but they all had the same theme: trust being weaponized, love being used as a tool for theft. Emily stood beside me, listening to these stories, adding her own perspective. "I was the daughter who didn't want to believe," she told one woman. "I was so desperate for love that I missed every warning sign. But my father saw what I couldn't. And even though I hated him for it, at the time he saved both of us." Driving home that evening, Emily was quiet. "What are you thinking about?" I asked. "I'm thinking about how many people don't have someone like you. Someone willing to look past their anger and protect them anyway. How many people lose everything because there's no one there to catch them. That's why you do the work you do now." "I guess so. I just wish I could help more people." "You are helping. Every person you talk to, every family you counsel, you're making a difference." She smiled. "We make a difference, together." It's been over a year now since that terrible day when Brandon showed up at my door with his fake notary and his fraudulent documents. Emily lives in her own apartment again, back on her feet, stronger than before. She's still single, still cautious, but she's starting to believe in the possibility of happiness again. As for me, I'm still in my house. The house my wife and I built, the house Brandon tried to steal. The house that became the battleground where I fought for my daughter's future. I've made some changes. The garden is fuller now with new plantings that Emily and I chose together. I've updated the security system, though the hidden cameras are gone. I don't need them anymore. Frank comes over for dinner once a week. We play chess and talk about the old days and how lucky we are to still be here. Detective Morrison stopped by a few months ago just to check in. She told me the district attorney's office now uses my case as a teaching example in elder abuse prosecutions. "You did something a lot of people can't do," she said. "You stood your ground. You were smarter than the predator. That doesn't always happen." "I had good help." "Yes, but you had the courage to ask for it. A lot of victims don't." I think about that sometimes. About how different things could have been if I'd dismissed my instincts, if I'd decided I was just being paranoid, if I'd let love for my daughter cloud my judgment about Brandon. I think about Dorothy Parker in Seattle, who probably had the same instincts, but couldn't act on them in time. The thing about people like Brandon is they're very good at what they do. They don't look like monsters. They look like charming, successful, caring people. They say all the right things. They know how to make you doubt yourself, how to make you feel guilty for being suspicious. That's what makes them so dangerous. I learned that protecting someone you love sometimes means letting them get hurt. Emily had to experience Brandon's betrayal to truly understand what kind of person he was. If I'd stopped the wedding, she would have always wondered. She would have blamed me. Our relationship might never have recovered. But by letting it play out, by being ready to catch her when she fell, I gave her the chance to learn the lesson herself. And that made all the difference. Emily and I talk about it sometimes late at night over tea in my kitchen. About how close we came to disaster. About how Brandon almost won. About how a few different choices could have changed everything. "Do you ever regret not stopping the wedding?" she asked me recently. I thought about it for a long moment. "Every day," I admitted. "I hate that you had to go through that pain. I hate that you married someone who never loved you the way you deserved. But I also know that if I had stopped it, we wouldn't be here now. You wouldn't have seen the truth. You wouldn't have learned to trust your own judgment again. and we wouldn't have the relationship we have now. Which is better than before, she said. Much better. We don't hide things from each other anymore. We're honest, even when it's hard. Even when it's hard, she agreed. As for Brandon, I don't think about him much anymore. The anger I felt has faded. He's in prison, and he'll be there for years. The other victims he scammed are getting some restitution through various legal processes. His life of manipulation is over. I don't forgive him. I don't think forgiveness is the right word for what I feel. But I've let go of the need for revenge, the desire to see him suffer more than he already is. Holding on to that anger would only hurt me, and he's taken enough from our family already. What I feel instead is relief. Relief that Emily is safe. Relief that I still have my home. Relief that our relationship is stronger than ever. And maybe in a strange way, gratitude. Because this experience taught us both so much about trust, about manipulation, about the importance of listening to instincts, even when they're uncomfortable. Emily asked me once if I think she'll ever be able to fully trust someone again. I told her I hope so, that not everyone is Brandon, that there are good people in the world who love honestly and without agenda. But I also told her that it's okay to be cautious, to take time to ask questions. Trust, once broken, takes time to rebuild. Now as I sit in my living room, the same room where Brandon tried to steal my life, I think about what family really means. It's not just about love. It's about protection, about sacrifice, about doing the hard thing, even when it hurts. It's about being there to catch someone when they fall, even if you have to let them fall first. I don't know if forgiveness is the right word for what I feel toward Brandon. But letting go, that saved both of us. It freed Emily from guilt and me from anger. It allowed us to move forward instead of staying stuck in that moment of betrayal. The house still stands. The garden still grows. Emily still comes over for Sunday dinner. And sometimes when I'm sitting on the porch watching the sunset, I talk to my wife. I think we did okay, I tell her. Our daughter is strong. She's healing. She's going to be okay. I like to think she's proud of how I handled it, how I protected our daughter without destroying our relationship, how I was smart enough to outmaneuver a predator and wise enough to know when to fight and when to wait. Maybe that's what family is. Not perfect, not always right, but always there to catch you when you fall if you let them. And sometimes, if you're very lucky, the fall teaches you how to be stronger when you stand back up. So if you're watching this, and you've ever been in a situation where you had to choose between protecting someone and respecting their choices, I want you to know something. Sometimes love means letting people make mistakes. Sometimes it means standing by even when they push you away. And sometimes it means preparing to catch them when they finally fall. Have you ever had to protect someone who didn't want to be protected? Have you ever seen warning signs that everyone else missed? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. I'd love to hear your stories, because I think we all learn from each other's experiences. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and share it with someone who might need to hear it. You never know who might be dealing with something similar, who might need the courage to trust their instincts and protect the people they love. And don't forget to subscribe to this channel for more real stories about life, family, and the hard choices we all have to make sometimes. Thank you for listening to my story. Thank you for being here. I hope you never have to face something like this. But if you do, I hope you'll remember that it's okay to be suspicious. It's okay to investigate. And it's okay to fight for the people you love, even when they don't understand why. Stay safe out there. Protect your family. Trust your instincts. And remember that sometimes the hardest part of loving someone is letting them learn their own lessons while making sure you're there to help them get back up. Take care of yourselves and each other.